All right. Well, let's get this started. So, first off, we have Ellen Karis in the flesh. Yes, exactly. Um,
Hello. Yes. I got in three
everyone,
days.
this
This
is
is me.
BBoy. I'm sure everyone knows who BBoy is. If you don't, for some reason, you should. BBoy is an
That's okay.
English-speaking OverBoost creator, streamer that lives in Japan. Our resident cosplayer. He usually does Venti, but this time it's Ellen. What else? Breakdancer, student, brave, sufferer. Am I missing anything else?
Uh, no, I think you got it. That's like mainly the things I am been focusing on life is just like dancing, cosplaying, and also Gundam Exverses.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, so the reason why I have B-Boy here is because we're gonna have sort of just like an open discussion about Gundam Extreme Versus. There's been a lot going on lately with, various parts of the community and things that have been going on. There's been a lot of discussion on Twitter and things like that. So we're just gonna kind of air it all out. We're gonna spill all the tea. No, we're not, but we're just gonna have a conversation. So back in like June, some of you guys might have seen. I made a video about the Gundam Extreme Versus model, and when I made that video originally, it was mainly to educate people about just like the model itself, because I found that a lot of people on Twitter that were like just discovering Mbon or the Versus series in general just didn't really understand why we weren't getting new ports, right? They're like, oh my god, this game is so cool. How come we only have Mbon here? Like, why is this game only in the arcades? Whatever. Um, but as I started to write that video, I came across a post by Extreme versus Database, who posts like a lot of stats related to the current arcade version. And they were saying their blog post made a lot of good points about like the inverse, where there actually might be like some reasons for Bandai to shift focus to more of like a home port, right? And they were saying things like, since COVID, the player population in the arcades has never gone back up to pre-COVID levels. And, Bandai's costs keep increasing. So like I up until that point, I previously had thought that arcades were still like thriving, because it was always just my impression that, arcades are a big part of Japanese culture, and, there's still tons of people going to them. So I guess the first thing I wanted to ask you was like, as someone who, I don't know how long you've lived in Japan. I think it's more than a few years, but did you
It's
see that
been
kind of
about like
shift?
3 or 4 years.
3 or 4 years, yeah. So did you see that kind of shift
Um,
during COVID, like when people just stopped, and then like, is it true, like have people not really come back in the same capacity as before COVID hit?
it's kind of been so I came here back in like 2020, so it's
Yeah.
always kind of been in the COVID times ever since I've
Okay.
ever been in Japan.
Got you.
So definitely like now you would probably see a lot more people like crowding the arcades and whatnot. And to be
Mm.
fair, I do play at a really weird ass time. It's from around like 11 to like 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., right? So
Like
no one
before,
is
between your
technically
classes?
really like what. Right, so that's my off period, right? So
Yeah,
what I
yeah, yeah.
do is I take my first period and then I hop on a bike, go to the arcade, stream there, and then come back. So it's a really weird time. But even then, I think when some of my American friends came over to play like XBoost and whatnot,
Hmm.
we had a problem where we just keep on running into the same people over and over again, and
Yeah.
this is across like all of Japan and whatnot, right? Like
Okay.
you probably expect to see a bit more variety in plays, especially when we're in three different ranks and whatnot,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which will go into a bit more later of like the
Yeah.
ranking system and the changes and whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, but even then, right, I run into the same players, and my other stream, I got matched with the same player 3 times. So, yeah, it's a bit rough. It's a bit rough.
Yeah, so I guess so even though, you're obviously at different arcades, it can match you with anybody in Japan, like it's all connected over the same network then.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And so I guess, yeah, so it seems like, and maybe it's, again, maybe it's just because you happen to play at these extremely weird hours, but it seems like, there's less and less of a population if you keep getting matched against the same people. Do you find that like between sessions too, like not just in the same day, like if you stream, like I know you do like Mondays and Thursdays typically. So like, do you ever get matched with someone on Monday and then match with them again on Thursday, like the same, like you recognize the same names or no?
Um, I think the big thing is I probably don't recognize their names. I don't really keep it into mind
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
of like some people's names and whatnot. And also like people can also change their names
Yeah, they
one
use
time a
like the
month,
Smurf
so
names
that
all the
can be
time.
kind of something as well. Yeah, like that is probably another thing we can kind of go into is like
Yeah,
combating against Smurfs, which this game does not do a good well job of.
the guy with two accounts. Yeah.
But yeah, okay, I will get into why I do that, which and also I feel like I can vouch for a lot of why the other players like kind of need to do that as well with the new ranking system that we implemented, which we'll also be breaking down into. There's
Yes,
a lot of context that needs to be kind of explained
for
within this
sure.
game.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry to go back to the question.
No, 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 you're
I
good.
think it's mostly just kind of that one day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, so if we're looking at like the state of the game in general, obviously the series has gone through like a really big shift. When I looked at, again, when I made that video, I came across a chart that Extreme versus Database had put up. It was like a Google chart that showed the player populations. And you can see like there was this massive spike when Extreme versus 2 came out, which is kind of to be expected, obviously. Like it's the first sequel, technically, like the first one to have the number 2 in whatever it was, like 10 years probably, something like that, or close to 10 years. So it's understandable that you would see a big spike. I think also, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think there was also like new graphics cards installed in the new cabs for Extreme versus 2 compared to the Maxi Boost on ones. Not 100% sure. That was something that I heard. Um,
I think it was sorry, I'll continue.
no, 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 go ahead.
Okay, I think it was entirely it's either graphics cards or entirely like different cabs, but I would
Mhm.
say like the main thing is yeah, so going from M-Bond to X versus 2, we see like a huge graphical update and whatnot.
Yeah,
And of course, like you said, it's a whole different series, right? So some suits that were previously in M-Bond, right? Like Hein Destiny,
yeah,
GNX3, Gundam Mark II Camille, and
yeah,
L as well, they did not make it into EX
right,
versus 2 and whatnot.
yeah,
Um but going from cross boost to overboost, right? It's just kind of like maybe like let's say EX versus 2 is 1.0, XBoost could be like 2.0, overboost could
yeah,
be like 3.0, right?
right.
They use the same exact cabs, just kind of like a system UI overhaul a bit.
Okay,
So
okay,
compared to like the changes between M-Bond to EX versus 2, it's not that monumental.
okay. I see. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like, and you can, yeah, I definitely notice like the graphic updates too. The one thing I do find funny is whenever you look at, and this is kind of off topic, but when you look at like Gundam Versus compared to like the Extreme Versus series, I always find it funny how like the X Versus games really do like show in the art style that extreme part. Like all the colors are so like bright and like vibrant, whereas like if you look at Gundam Versus, it's so like dull and like gray, and it
It's
almost looks
pretty
like
down to, it's like
boring.
realistic, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what they
yeah.
try to go for. Yeah.
But yeah, so in terms of like how the game has shifted since Mbon, like so one thing that I've talked about, I'm with you and with a bunch of other people as well, is that like a lot of people think that Mbon is like the most balanced version of Extreme Versus. They like it a lot. They think the newer games are like sometimes like they're too fast paced. It seems like every suit has some sort of bullshit can't miss move, and every suit has some sort of like weird like cartwheel, twist, somersault, fast fall, cancel move that they lets them land safely. So like, do you think like yeah, exactly, just the twirling of the Faract? Yeah, we literally seen the example in real time. So like, do you think that is that sentiment kind of shared like in Japan as well, or do people in Japan like that kind of more fast paced style of like cross boost and overboost?
There is all like I think Roshigu kind of talked about this, and okay, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna be dropping
That's fine.
names of like Gundam YouTubers and people who I'm referencing to and whatnot. And
Yeah,
even
yeah,
though they probably don't think of that too fondly to the community, but it just helps with like keeping everyone up with the
yeah,
conversation. He
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of mentioned that it's like when you're in like you kind of look to the past a bit more fondly, right, compared to like what you're
Hindsight's
dealing with
2020.
currently.
Yeah,
Yeah, like there's a lot of people right now who are like, oh my god, Sky X2, or like, boy, that's so busted, right? I'm like, man, maybe EX versus 2 or XBoost is so much better. But then it's like, do you want to go back to the era of beam magnums? I'm not sure.
yeah. It's
And
like
this is
there's
kind of the
always
thing with EX
something.
versus. Yeah, yeah, right. There's always something that is just like just so volatile in the game that's just
Yeah,
like
yeah,
screwing everyone's, melting our 100 yens away. But like we have and I'm sure people who've like played the newer versions of the game can probably say yeah it's nice to not have to worry about like stepping everything that almost comes to you like all
yeah,
the time.
yeah,
And A lot of people say Mbon is the faster game. I think I would kind of say so. I feel like it's a bit more responsive compared to like EX versus 2.
Okay.
Going from Mbon to EX versus 2, this is just kind of me personally. It felt like there was a bit of like input lag, or my suit was a little bit less responsive compared to the games and whatnot. And then you take a little bit of a slower and less responsive game with your suit's movement, and then you combine it with these, tools where not only do you have to step them, you had Japanese pro players making guides on specific step timings and directions for individual tools, right? Narratives, little CPAC funnels, right? And X's little BC shot, right, where he aims it and it comes in like at a weird angles and whatnot. It's like, okay, when it's on your like side, you gotta make sure you step back, right? And you gotta you gotta make sure you see him like hold out the rifle and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it is. I think their mindset was, it's like, okay, in Mbon, right, newer players are not hitting shots, right, against like higher level players, and they're just dodging everything, so they're probably frustrated by that. Okay, let's make the suit slower and let's make shit hit more.
Yeah.
What that leads to is newer players just getting screwed up by all the BS and whatnot, and also your 100 yens just going down the drain more.
Yeah, I'm sure that probably leads to a little bit the rank inflation, which we'll get to in a bit. But yeah, so the other thing in this kind of vein when it comes to the state of the game is that with a lot of the conversation that's been going on recently, and particularly with some practices where people have been, let's say, importing XBoost cabinets outside of Japan, I have heard and I've seen like some conversations and heard from people like yourself that some Japanese players are kind of dissatisfied with some of the state of OverBoost in general, and there were some things that they liked about XBoost more. So like, I don't know what the specific changes might be like that they're referring to, but obviously like we saw some pretty big changes in the form of like, vertical boost, and now you can basically boost dive again even though it's just downwards, and things like Pyeongkakus, a lot of the time you can't Zeus anymore and step right away. Like little changes, like I think even like back turn assist, you're not allowed to fast fall anymore or something like that. So those types of is it like those types of like gameplay things, or does it have more to do with sort of like the ranking system and like how that sort of plays into it in terms of like their dissatisfaction?
It's a little bit of combination of both, and I feel like each element kind of upsets like a different demographic of players. So let me start with the ranking system, right? I feel like the ranking system is really like dissatisfactory towards player of like the really upper echelon. We're talking like top 10%, like top 1% of ace rank players and whatnot. Where so Wonton Oji, a really like just a Garazo player who just grinds. Like last month, he tried to go for like the #1 spot.
Yeah.
And when you get to that point, if you want to climb, you need to get a 70% win rate on that day, right? Not 60%, you'll drop. Right. Yeah. So it's you lose so much, right? And you gain so little. And the problem is, right, we're condensing like how many ranks? We almost had like 24 ranks in XBoost, right? We're all the way from like D to like S, EX, EXX, right?
Yeah,
we're just condensing those all into like just these 3 ranks, right? So you're bound to have like the disparity in ace rank is just, naturally going to happen, right? And if you get matched with like, a partner who unfortunately is probably like, let's just say less experienced,
right,
and you guys lose, like your 5 wins, 10 wins worth of rank points, just there you go, bye. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, like Chad, imagine like when you go into shuffle rooms in Mbon that are worldwide and don't have Wi-Fi protection, and then you get paired with, a player who, which it's nothing wrong with it, but like they're not your skill level and you lose and you get frustrated. But imagine if your 100 yen was on the line and your rank was on the line every single time. Probably pretty frustrating. That's so wild. I didn't know that it went down to only 3 ranks.
It's rough. That's
like
rough.
Such a big difference.
Yeah, and also Densetsu no Okorizaru kind of went over in his video as well. Before, it wasn't a number, it was just like a small meter that was relatively ambiguous, right? Okay. So if you won or lost, you wouldn't kind of tell how much rank you kind of gained. It's really hard for the player. So you just kind of keep that really in the back of your head, and that just allowed for like players to just kind of grind out through games. That's kind of his opinion.
Yeah.
Personally, I kind of like the ranking system, but that's because I am an ace 45, 30%, right? And I don't play consistently as much.
Right.
And I like, so every win, actually, I gain a decent amount. I am matched with like the sharks up there.
Yeah.
So when I lose to them, I only lose like 0.7. So some players like me, it does kind of help, but I can totally understand the frustration for like the upper echelon.
Yeah, so I guess it factors the difference between like your rank and your opponents, and like it tailors your gains and losses. Got you. Okay.
Yes.
So like in terms of like, obviously we don't know the reason why they would make such like a drastic change, like Bandai, but does this kind of change seem like it might be, you know, their attempt to make it easier for new players to like climb ranks and maybe not feel as bad that they're losing all the time, or what do you think?
I feel like they kind of want to implement like sort of like what you kind of see in like online games, like those free to play online games, like those kind of rank climbs and whatnot. That's kind of one thing, and a bit more like streamlined and easy to tell as well. But I would say like in pilot rank, sort of like in the 20%. Once you get to like 5% and like the 1%, you really start to be matching against the Smurfs and whatnot. But that is a problem that's always kind of been in this game. But yeah, I would say in pilot ranks, right? Yeah, it's like there's a lot of like beginners out there who are still kind of learning the ropes of the games, and I feel like you can find matches like kind of similar to your players. Unfortunately, I feel like this system is very punishing to high level players, and I feel like if they added maybe like 1 or 2 ranks and just had like, you know, allowed like for a swimming pool for all the sharks and whatnot, I feel like that might solve a few things,
like reduce the bloat a little bit.
Yeah.
I get like inflation is out of control. I get, it's kind of a weird situation to be in, because like on one hand you want to make it easier for new players to get into the game and make sure they're having a good time, but on the other hand, like if you're not tailoring to your most dedicated players, you're kind of left in a bad spot as well. Like it's kind of a hard balancing act, right? Okay, so let's get into this. Kind of ties into those higher end players. So you and I have been talking a lot lately about the meta and why the meta is so heavily defined. Like throughout, it doesn't matter what game it is. It could be, you know, Mbon with like reborn star count comps. It can be Extreme versus 2. It could be Cross Boost. Like Cross Boost, it was towards the end, it was FF New and Justice was like the go-to comp for. I think I saw at least like 5 of those teams in GGGP last year. So. And then lately, it's been either, you know, Double Sky X2 or now Double Sky and Farakt. So you explained to me that, and it made a lot of sense, obviously. I didn't really consider it that way. But, you know, people are going to play meta even more so in the arcades because every single game, your money is on the line. So it's not just your rank, like if you were at home playing on a console, but you're literally pissing away money every time that you play this game. So how do you think that sort of affects, you know, whether it's people's willingness to try new suits, whether it's, you know, always playing meta comps in ranked, and maybe, you know, you can get into Smurf accounts and stuff like that. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay. I will also kind of bring this back.
Yeah.
No, it's an amazing question. But I guess I'll kind of start with kind of one of the things that we brought up. Our last topic is they got rid of Zeusas and turnaround Omicons, right? Turnaround assist free falls.
Yeah.
So there are some suits that were designed around that, right? And all of a sudden they kind of take that away.
Yeah.
And what you have is just a lottery system of who gets to be compensated, who gets welfare, right? Who gets tax returns, and who does not.
Because some suits still have, like, some suits can still Zeusa, right? It's just not every single one. Like, it's just random.
2.
Okay. 2. Well, all right.
So yeah, Gundam Heavy Arms Endless Waltz,
which makes sense.
Zeon, they get to have it, right?
Okay.
But Fargia, no, she does not, right? And did she get any like cool tools and compensation?
Probably
and also, like Spiegel before he got buffed as well had the same problem, right?
Right.
It's like, no.
That used to be like his whole playstyle.
Right, and like Fargia as well, like she's on the bottom end. She was like pretty good, a pretty good 2K, and then like. But then you have Lupus and Vidar, Kimara's Vidar, where it's like, Well, you guys lose that. Oh, we'll give you ACBC. We'll give you the ability to catch anyone. Oh, lupus. Oh, how about super armor and burst? Oh, you want that? Yeah, good. Yeah, go ahead, take it.
Go
Yeah.
nuts. Yeah.
So, yep, go crazy, go nuts, right? So, these players, right? Who, let's say you're Farsia main, right? Like you probably want to just quit the game.
Yeah,
I mean, as a Brave player, I've come to the realization.
Yeah, imagine if Brave wasn't very good.
I shouldn't take this game seriously. I should just play. Of course I'm gonna try my best every match, but just oh, okay. Like I'm not gonna expect to win. Right. Just do whatever we can, do the best as I can to the abilities of my suit, right? But in the end, like, don't take it too seriously. Probably just wait for like a balance patch.
For sure.
Either my suit gets buffed or a new one comes out, right? So it's like when your 100 yen is on the line, you're not gonna bank it on playing like some gutted, you're not gonna play Farja with her arms cut off, right?
Yeah.
Like, you only have so many 100 yens. You only have so much time. I streamed. I get some of that back.
Yeah.
And also, I have Stockholm syndrome with Brave. Like I played him way too much. Yeah, and I'm like, oh wait, I actually have to be like, I can't do like a really greedy ass punish and be safe about it. Oh fuck.
You mean I have to use my brain? How dare you?
Well, I mean, I use my brain like sort of an overheat. That does, like learning.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you don't have like the get out of jail free cards necessarily.
Right. The potential get out of jail free card. Yeah. So it's they gutted the identity of some suits, right? And then they also in some situations, like tournament Omicons was a pretty high defensive tool.
Yeah.
So they got rid of that as well, right? So definitely, I feel like the winners and the losers in OverBoost is pretty. There's a pretty good amount of disparity, kind of between them and whatnot, right? Whatnot. So yeah, it's like why wouldn't you do that, right? And it's also frustrating when you just lose to those suits as well.
Exactly.
I'm like, I don't want to succumb to that scumbaggery.
Yeah, I gotta play play against the same thing again. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
for sure.
And kind of going into like the problem with like when like beforehand, right? We had a decent amount of variety. We had Double X, Destiny, Wing Zero, Shinanju, Vidar. We had 5. Oh, Togi's 3. Maybe Versago. Nah, Versago. He was kind of. He was getting there. Full Saber, 7 sword, right? I mean, like these are maybe let's just say come to like 6. 6 pretty viable 3Ks and whatnot. And then you also have like Yagidoga, Amatsu, Ariel, right? You had all this variety in the ranks. Now there's only one comp. There's only one comp. Excuse Sky. That's like two letters.
Way to
two
go,
letters
Bandai.
per suit.
Well done.
Yeah.
That's a tough one for sure. Yeah, now that you mention it, I didn't realize there was like quite a bit of variety in the 3Ks before Double O Sky came out. Because I guess there were no new 3Ks added, right? Before that. Because it was Ariel and Core Gundam, and then Dreadnought H, and then
technically, if you count Darkhound, because
Darkhound got pushed up, right? To 3K. But he didn't.
He got pushed up.
Like the buff wasn't enough to make. Yeah, I was gonna say. It didn't really move the numbers, I don't think, right?
Yeah.
So is that what factors in then to people, having Smurf accounts? Like you play on a second account whenever you want to experiment, I believe, like whenever you don't want to play Brave, and try other suits out. Like, is it just to kind of protect your rank so that you don't play on your main account and dip if you decide to like try something else?
It is kind of that. It is, of course, like, I did, put in some work to get into like ace rank and whatnot. So I do want to protect that, but it's like I feel really bad for my partner.
Right.
If I like just absolutely like play like an offsuit and like absolutely throw. So like my Brave probably is probably rightfully sort of in ace rank. I mean, if the meta changes and it's like a bad matchup, then I guess he will probably go down. But it's like, for example, like my Fenice does not belong there, right? My Fenice is definitely more of a pilot level Fenice, right? So I'm like, I kind of want to match my partner's like skill level, like me as a player, and then me also plus the combination of the suit. Where does that kind of put me, right? So
plus it's not like on if you're playing Mbon on console where you can just like message the person and be like, hey, sorry, like I'm trying. If they're like in a different arcade across the country, you have no way of telling them, no, I swear I'm just learning the suit. They're just gonna think, oh, this guy's ass, right? Like
you can change your name. You can change your name to that. Yeah,
I'm learning a new suit, so please forgive me.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, probably pilot rank is the way. Like free match, you'll be still paired with like EX players for some reason. So
Mm.
it's just like, okay, that's not a good environment either. So
Yeah,
that
yeah,
kind of
for
leaves
sure.
you to smurfing, right?
Right.
Which is really unfortunate.
At least
Yeah.
that way you can pretend you're like, no, I swear I'm new. Look at my rank. It's so low.
I'm Shoshinsha, bro. I'm Shoshinsha. I was just like beginner one. Yeah.
All right. So next we're gonna move on to talking about like kind of looking towards like potential solutions in terms of keeping players engaged, whether that's bringing in new players or helping veteran players find ways to continue enjoying the game. So you and I talked about how there's a issue right now where a lot of the most committed players are players that grew up with the game, like they went to arcades as kids, and as they were growing up as teenagers, now they might have like full-time jobs, and they might not be able to get to the arcade as much. And when they do go to the arcade, they have to play these extremely meta matches that are very sweaty. It's very stressful. You're doing the same thing every single time. So you mentioned that variety is a necessity in terms of keeping players engaged, and I think you gave me some examples, as in like the special events. Like there was recently an unlimited burst event. I actually didn't hear about that until you told me about it. But it made me think of like some other ones, like when they did dual select in XBoost last year, where you could pick two suits, and then in the versus screen you actually decide which one you want to do. So like, how do you think that those tie into like player satisfaction, or just, I guess, helping the game feel fresh? And then maybe you could also touch on, you mentioned to me party elements, and you mentioned you wanted to talk about that a little bit and like how that could help, having some sort of party element in Extreme Versus.
Yeah, so if you take a look, so kind of going to the Unlimited Burst EX versus Fest, if you
Yeah.
take a look at the graph, you'll kind of, and this is on Bresto-san. He is a brave player, now
Let's
flag player,
go.
unfortunately, but it's okay, it's
It's close
okay.
enough.
Yeah, it was a kind of a response video to Densetsu no Korizaru. So Densetsu no Korizaru, he kind of created this video that really caused waves and
Mm-hmm.
kind of brought up the topic. He did kind of strongly word it against the kind of developers,
Okay.
right? And I feel like there is some kind of truth to that.
Mm-hmm.
But also I really kind of like the response video that Buresto-san kind of made, which, like as you said, it brought up a point before. It was like players are getting older, right? Players are getting older. We're having less and less time. There are not enough younger players and whatnot who like join the games and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And then he brought up like a player graph, like showing when there's like a kind of a significant spike. That's during like the EX versus Fest with like the unlimited burst and whatnot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think those, like, it's a good break, right? You're not
Yeah, yeah.
in an unlimited burst game. You're not gonna take that seriously,
Yeah,
right? It's
it's
everyone is
inherently
busted as hell,
unserious.
right?
Yeah.
It's just supposed to be like wacky as hell, right? And imagine if we had those options, right? Sort of like in a console version where you're able to create like an unlimited burst lobby and just
Yeah.
like have fun with your friends and
Yeah,
whatnot. Like,
for sure.
I think that's truly amazing. Like, and going on to more party mechanics, we could have like colony events, which were in previous like older Gundam games, where just
Okay.
giant laser would just come across the screen, or
Yeah.
like a nuke and whatnot. Of course, no, I don't want this to be like a competitive game mode, right? And I
Yeah,
really hope
yeah.
they still like keep the integrity of like the EX versus competitive, because I do like playing that as well when
Mm.
Brave is not total dog shit. Sorry.
Feels bad.
But yeah, and then you can introduce that with like newer players, right? I feel like that's like kind of a good like balancing act of something, right?
Yeah,
Because doesn't matter how good you are at the game if your ass getting nuked.
yeah.
So, yeah, but I feel like a lot of our problems and bringing in the newer players can be kind of alleviated. Hint, hint, going to consoles,
Well,
because
well,
you
well.
don't want to spend 100 yen just to be matched with Smurfs. Okay,
Yeah.
no matter what tutorials you create or how many G-Witch suits you kind of
Yeah.
bring into Gundam EX Versus, right? Newer players don't want to deal with that. And also another good point that Barista-san brought up in his video is,
Mm-hmm.
when you go to the arcades, right? When you think of like arcade game, right? Especially for us, I feel like we know this, like like especially in Americas, right? You see those like skee ball, when even skee ball is like dead, and I'm sad. I love skee ball.
Really?
Okay, but like you see those like really big, grandiose, like the Star Wars pod and whatnot.
Yeah.
Those like very like games that only exist like kind of in the arcade, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, my alarm was kind of going off. But like Gundam EX Versus, right? It's like, can't you just play that at home?
You would think. You're like, this
Yeah.
looks like a home game. You would
Right,
think.
this looks like just like a console game that they kind of
Yeah.
have on this, so it doesn't have that kind of like face value appeal,
Right.
for like newer people and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
Like we've probably like more in the 20s, people's in the 20s and 30s, they kind of grew up with that stuff, so they're used to kind of having those like console-esque looking games in the arcades. But for like newer players, it's like, why don't I go play this cool ass rhythm game?
Yeah, for sure.
It's got knobs, buttons, and whatnot. Yeah,
Looks much cooler.
Yeah,
I think that point kind of ties into like in terms of like the appearance of the game. A big part of it is obviously that Extreme Versus is like such a hard game to get into, especially like it's different like if you know people in the community. Like everyone that's in this chat right now probably like has had an experience where they were either brought in by somebody else or they helped somebody get into the game. They helped them join a Discord or whatever. So like in that sense, like the Extreme Versus community is good at like passing around community resources to help people learn the game. But if you look at the game at face value, it's so difficult to like approach as a new player because not only is Gundam already like super, super niche, right? Obviously massive in Japan, not as big here at all. But Gundam Extreme Versus then is like a niche within a niche, which makes it that much harder because the more popular Gundam games are games like GBO2, where, you're in a more realistic combat system that makes you feel like you're piloting this like giant mech, and it kind of makes sense. Whereas Extreme Versus, it's not only is it a fighting game, which, already is like its own separate community from like the rest of gamers. Now it's not a traditional fighter like Street Fighter or Tekken. It's this 2v2 arena fighter. You have to have roles, you have to coordinate with you and your partner, you have to manage your team health. So it's very, very daunting as a new player. And on top of that, there is no tutorial. I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong.
They added a new one.
They added one in OverBoost, right?
Yeah, it's kind of not enough. And a big thing about this game as well is there's like nothing. There's no other game that's really like it.
Yeah, 100%.
There's some in Japan. There was like a Dragon Ball Z one here and there, but in America, right, especially.
Yeah.
Rising of Incarnate. What is that?
What is that?
Yeah, and also it's a game that rewards experience, right?
Absolutely.
Like a good example is don't want to throw any shade, but like I'm sure some of us saw like Kazunoko try to like play Mbon and whatnot, and even someone like him, right, who has this immense amount of game sense, right, and is able to probably understand like any fighting game probably quicker than almost all of us here.
Yeah,
he had like a 49% or 47% win rate, right? So yeah, and then like this is also with the help of like a really good teacher, Nensan. He also has like these old tutorial YouTube who was like coaching him through like his matches with like Magu and whatnot. Even then, right, it's just like it's still 49%.
It's so hard to approach. And so in terms of the OverBoost tutorial, like, so you said it's not that good. Like, what does it actually look like? Like, what does it just take you through kind of like the basics, or like how does it work?
It kind of takes like boost dashing and whatnot, and press the main button to like kind of fire and whatnot. Yeah,
these are what the buttons do. Yeah. Okay, so I guess my question is, does it go into anything that's like above surface level? So things like, for example, like a melee derivative or a cancel route. Like, does it cover any of those things, or is it literally just the basics of like these are what the buttons do?
I think there's like different layers to it. So one of them is like kind of like the basic buttons, and probably like the further like cancel routes of like combos go into that as well. But the problem is, it's like if you teach combos to like a newer player, right, they're gonna want to hit those combos.
Yeah.
But if they're not playing a melee based suit, you're literally like teaching them to hang themselves in this game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's tough for sure. Like a lot of the melee combos are super, super flashy, but to newer players, it's not very obvious that melee is so dangerous, especially if the other player is, they know what they're doing, right? That's always kind of been a tough point. Like the point that I always bring up is like Mbon, the only sort of tutorial that Mbon has. Like most traditional fighting games, like they have like a combo list, They have like a proper training mode where you can see inputs as you combo, things like that. Whereas like Mbon, it's like the only place that you can see the move list is, I'm pretty sure, like in the branch battle of all things. Like when you're gonna select your suit before branch battle, then you can pull up the move list, and it's just, again, what all the buttons do. There's no combo routes. There's nothing like beyond surface level. So it's like, how can you expect players to kind of pick up this game and get into it when they're throwing themselves into the deep end, right? And that kind of ties into like, I think that one of the biggest misses in terms of Mbon's launch on console was that it just didn't really get marketed that much. Like, people have been talking lately about how Gun Evo got, they're like, oh, the marketing was so bad for Gun Evo. I don't necessarily agree with that in terms of at least like the volume of marketing, because it got like more marketing than any other Gundam game in recent years, from what I can tell. Right now, whether or not the quality of that marketing was good is like a different conversation. But you know, they had all these trailers going out. They had full animated cutscene trailers for every season. They were very active on social media, and then most of all, they had on launch day, they paid a bunch of like big streamers to play it. XQC, Moist Critical, like a bunch of those guys. Granted, of course, it was obvious that they were paid. Like, no one's doubting, like, no one thinks that they were doing it for free because they liked the game. But like, the fact is, for whatever it was, like 3 hours, 4 hours on opening night, Gun Evo was at the top of the Twitch directory, above just chatting, above League of Legends, everything, which is insane. So I feel like if Mbon had received that same level of marketing, I think it could have been much more of a staple. Maybe not a staple, but it would have done a lot better than it did in the US. Because it's like, why do you have Maximilian, dude, who's a fighting game content creator? Why are you paying him to play Gun Evo, and you didn't pay him to play Mbon when it came out? Like, it just, that doesn't make sense, right? So it's just, we're kind of in a weird spot, man. It seems like, and I'm sure it doesn't help. I didn't know this until recently, like, so I'm sure other people might not as well, but like, obviously Bandai Namco Entertainment, that's over here, is not the same as Bandai Namco Amusement, which is who runs Extreme Versus in the arcades. They're different companies, they have different business goals, so that's kind of, it's very tough, right? So let me see what else we got on the dock here. I mean, is there anything else that you particularly wanted to touch on aside from that? Like, we talked about variety, we talked about like the party aspect. Like, anything else that comes to mind?
I think, yeah, kind of like on like the marketing, I think, yeah, definitely any sort of form of that, like, definitely would help. I think also, but a big problem is this game is very like foreign. Like the style of this game is very foreign to like North American audience.
For sure.
We don't have anything really like it, right? Fighting games, there are like a dedicated amount of people who like know, like, you know, 2D, 3D fighting games and whatnot. But this is kind of, we do kind of have like arena fighters, sort of, right? Like
like the new Jujutsu Kaisen one that's coming out.
I have not
can't wait to play
yeah,
Curse Clash.
Yeah, those are kind of like not really associated with, yeah, they're like outside of like the fighting games you would see at like Evo, right?
Yeah.
But then it's like, let's say those kind of like players who normally like play Jump Force, I feel like Jump Force kind of does a good job of like attracting a casual crowd, or most of the time those types of games do.
Yeah.
But imagine like, it's like, oh, there's an online mode, let's play, and then you just like get stomped by the veterans. It's like, it's rough. It's rough. That's tough, man.
Yeah, like a lot of the public rooms like in Mbon, they're, because the community is so small, they're usually filled with like the same players that have been playing for years. You have people that have been playing since Full Boost that are just like, they've been honing their skills for, 10 years. And then little Jimmy comes in just fresh off getting the game on sale for $20. He's like, I'm gonna play some Gundam, and gets stomped into the ground. Like, yeah, it's a very discouraging thing, like in any game, not just it, but it feels worse because the player population is so low, right? Now when it comes to, potential, I guess, strategies maybe for bringing the game worldwide, because, there's a lot of people that have thrown things out there. So right now, OverBoost does have a season pass, right? Even in the arcades. So you pay for it. I think you just get like like cosmetics for your player cards and things like that, right?
Yep.
And that's it. Yeah. So weird. kind of a weird thing for an arcade game, but you know, it's not my business. That's probably, I imagine that's probably their way of trying to get, you know, more money because less people are coming to the arcades now. In that, you know, Extreme versus Database blog post, there was a model that they suggested that I want to get your opinion on, where basically they suggested, you know, porting the game worldwide, but kind of always keeping it a good ways behind the arcade version. So say, how many suits are in OverBoost now? Like over 200, probably 220 or so.
Yeah.
So maybe like releasing it with like 80 suits to start, because like less characters is also less intimidating for a new player. Like imagine getting a new fighting game and there's 200 characters for you to pick from, right?
I kind of have a point to bring
Yeah,
up.
yeah, go for it.
I think some of my most enjoyable times with playing Brave Commander was actually like during like the beta versions, like the trial versions of OverBoost, when they
Yeah.
like had half the roster
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then have to deal with like all the other like BS coming towards me. Yeah,
For sure.
that was fun.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was
for
fun.
sure.
Yeah,
When
so
there's not like all the super
definitely
meta stuff,
helps.
yeah.
Yeah, it definitely helps.
So yeah, so the suggestion was basically like, you know, to start with like a version that had like 80 suits, for example, and that's the one that gets ported worldwide. The arcade version OverBoost continues as normal. They usually release like what, one suit every month, every 2 months maybe. And then for the console version, you have it so that, you know, every season or whatever it might be, you add like one more suit. So you're slowly adding suits over time, but because the arcade version is also adding suits every month, it takes a really long time to catch up to the arcade version. So that way you have people that can play it at home, but then you also have a reason to go to the arcades, because I imagine that's, you know, the reason why Bandai is afraid to port it to consoles, because they're like, we're not going to get any arcade revenue anymore, because if people can play at home and not spend 100 yen, why would they, right? So that way, like, what are your thoughts on that in terms of, and you know, it's not the only suggestion in terms of like a model, but like, do you think something like that could work in terms of bringing the game
I feel
worldwide?
like in the kind of North American sphere, it might have a chance because we're used to a lot like sort of like games like Rainbow Six Siege
Yeah,
or kind of like Valorant, right? Where like every season they release kind of like a few new characters, like a new
yeah,
champion and whatnot.
for sure.
But for like the informed Gundam audience and also like Japan and whatnot, they're just like, huh, okay. It just kind of seems like they're obviously trying to, you know, like refrain from putting their effort in console or like
Yeah,
just trying to milk
yeah, for sure.
the revenue they can get from consoles. And I feel like a lot of people felt this with Gundam Versus, is
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the DLC were just like M-Bon suits, right?
That's the other
That they
thing.
just
Yeah,
kind of,
yeah, for sure.
yeah, it's, you know, they're gonna they charge like 500 yen a suit, or
Yeah.
it's like you gotta grind to like level 60 for like the latest one. It's like,
Like,
okay.
yeah, no, it's interesting that you bring up the Gundam Versus DLCs, because I think actually one of my favorite things about Gundam Versus was the fact that the roster was different, right? And it made sense that, you know, because they were trying to make it its own thing. That's why they dropped the Extreme from the title, you know, trying to make it a console exclusive so that, you know, worldwide we had something that was our own. And I liked that the roster, they tried new things, right? They had things like Slave Wraith. They had things, other suits from Missing Link. They had even like, it's not like I played suits like Methus, but like it was there. You know, they had a bunch of different, maybe lesser known suits, some more grunts and things like that. But the mistake that they made was leaving out the suits that everybody loves, and in some cases then selling them back as DLC, like not having God and Master in the base game, and then be like, actually, they're going to be like $5 each if you want them now. So it's like, of course, people are going to be pissed off. It's the same reason why like people are pissed off that Gun Evo didn't have Ariel or didn't have like Wing Zero or God Gundam, right? At some point, like you have to have the popular choices so that people can kind of get into it, right? I think like another thing that I was thinking about, like obviously because games are so like live service now, and because Overboost already has a season pass, and now that they're doing skins, you know, you could potentially do something where you have like a season pass. There's one new suit per season, and then you know your tier 100 or whatever is like a new skin for an existing suit, and then everything in between is just like cosmetics and stuff. So like there are options. I think it just comes down to, I think eventually it's just going to come down to whether Bandai thinks that like the profits they would make from releasing it worldwide is going to outweigh the revenue that they make from the arcades, right? Because until that change happens, like they don't really have a reason to not focus on arcades. Like I did the math when I made that video a while back, and it was like the average person to spend as much as they would to buy like a regular console game, they would only have to play like whatever it was, 700 matches or something like that, and that's assuming they lost every single game, so they had to spend 100 yen every single time. So it's like most players on console have like hundreds, thousands of matches, sometimes even on a single suit. So like if they had to pay for every single one of those in the arcade, like that's so much money that Bandai's getting, right? It's so difficult to justify bringing it over here because they just make so much money there. So it's tough for sure. Yeah. Let's I think, okay, before I start asking if anyone in chat has any questions, like is there anything else that you personally wanted to touch on with regards to this whole topic? Anything that's coming to mind or no?
I guess like I did kind of like, so you kind of mentioned like a model of like um having like a beta, I guess, overboost,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Beta overboost for consoles, right? Real overboost for like arcades and whatnot. I think yeah, I think that's pretty, like that's a pretty good one. But it's the problem is like we're so used to like the 200 like list of suits, which
Yeah.
it's just like no one. I don't think anyone has like touched 200s of the suits. I feel like most
No.
people at like play like suits like 5
Yeah.
or something,
Yeah.
right? Like from overboost, right?
Yeah.
Because like
For
you
sure.
usually just like stick to whatever you kind of play with and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I was thinking like I feel like they really don't want to like have any form of like the Extreme Versus series
Mm.
towards like they're so scared of like consoles cannibalizing arcades, which is what happened with Mbon, right?
Yeah.
Mbon really kind of took. It's also the combination with COVID as well, right?
Yeah, of
So
course, yeah.
I'm not sure if they kind of want to. Sorry, go on.
No. I was agreeing with you.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
feel like they don't want to kind of like repeat that fate again.
Mm.
So I was thinking maybe if they kind of have like Gundam versus 2 or something,
GVS 2,
where
let's go.
yeah, GVS 2 basically, right? Where they kind of have like it's have its like separate game, which I feel like they were trying to do, but I feel like it differentiated a bit too much from Extreme Versus, right? Like maybe like you guys they could do without like at least Boost Dive.
Mm.
Strikers was also like kind of busted.
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
yeah,
like
maybe we can touch
footage.
on that a bit. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
weird that I get that they were trying to do something different, right? And to be fair, Gundam Versus I think was very approachable for new players, right? Because both Boost Dive and Strikers were something that made it easier they're basically get out of jail free cards. Not 100% of the
Yeah.
time, that's a bit of an over exaggeration, but being able to instantly land without having to cancel and fast fall, and then having an on-demand assist that is not necessarily tied in canon to your suit, it can just be anything that you want. Those are things that make it a lot easier for newer players to survive, right? We had eras where before it got nerfed, like the X3 assists where he throws the fire things and it just had like ridiculous tracking, or the Kamar's trooper assist that was just like that insane lance that would just knock you way into the sky for like a good 5 seconds, right? Those things, again, good for getting new players in, really bad for veterans of Extreme Versus because they're like, every suit feels the same. It takes away
Yeah.
a lot of the individuality because not only did you add these things that everyone can do, you also took away a lot of the things that made suits unique, right? There was almost no cancel routes in that game at all, which takes away a lot of the depth that people like about Extreme Versus. So I feel like if you want to the balance that you have to strike is like how to make it approachable for new players while also not removing like the core of the series, right? And that's probably a pretty tough thing to pull off. Um, yeah, but I think at some point, you know, I'm not if enough JP players start importing their own cabs at home, it might
Mm-hmm.
eventually force Bandai's hand, right? If people liked cross boosts more than overboost, or there's things that they're not liking about overboost and they have another option, I don't see why they would keep spending money, right? So I'm hoping that we might eventually get to the point where Bandai's hand is kind of forced. As bad as that does sound, but like at a certain point, like the community's been so neglected. I mean, there was what was her name? Sarah EXVS2 that just full on like just outed the entire thing, and people like tagged
Bakudan
Bandai.
otoshimasu.
Yeah, literally, I'm dropping a bomb. This is what's happening. So it's like, it's no longer a secret. Like, it's a, people don't really talk about it like super publicly. But everyone knows that it's out there. Bandai probably knows that it's out there. So
super legal cabs.
Super legal cabs. So I feel like we're in a place where we're in a position where either, it'll eventually force Bandai's hand and they'll have to eventually focus on a port because they're like, okay, if everyone's doing this, we might as well make money off of it. Or, they'll do the corporate thing and cease and desist has entered the chat and just try and shut it down. So, I mean, we'll see. I think it'll be a very interesting next year or so. I always thought that, our best chance for a legitimate port was going to be in 2025 because Mbon was ported for the 10th anniversary and then the 15th anniversary would be 2025. So if they were going to do it, it would make sense to celebrate it that way. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah. Before we close things out, I'm gonna. Oh, do you have one more thing to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, go nuts.
I feel like there might be something. I don't want to get people's hopes up, right? But
here we go.
If you kind of look at the development, I'm sorry. And by the way, kind of going back to GVS2, right? I would also love just Extreme versus, but I feel like that's kind of a hard bargain to sell. So maybe kind of GVS2 could be kind of like a middle ground that appeases both the Bandai Namco Amusement and Bandai Namco Entertainment, right? But Amusements it seems kind of odd that they're really slow on development for Overboost when
you did
I wouldn't say Gundam is the most popular as it's been, but it's gained a lot of traction with Witch of Mercury, right? Sure. And let's say, for example, at launch, right, they released Ariel, Garibaldi, and Farax, right? They just came with the launch of Gundam Extreme versus Overboost, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that would attract a lot of the newcomers that came in with Suicide Module or the Witch from Mercury.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which they already added to Arsenal Base, which is another Gundam game that costs 200 yen a play.
Oh, good.
Yeah, you got a cool card. You get a cool card at the time.
Exactly. Isn't it kind of like a strategy game, kind of like UC Engage or no?
It's Gundam Clash Royale, LMAO.
Oh god.
Yeah. So it seems a bit weird that they're kind of slowing down development when it feels like they could be, striking when the iron is hot, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
for sure.
I feel like something is coming because after March of 2023, we got no updates. That was the final update. So everyone's okay, they're probably making the new game, right? But we're getting the same, we're getting 3 months updates apart, right? And the amount of suits that they released for the new game is only 2. To be fair, they got rid of Zeusas and Omicons. There's a lot of
they spent all the dev time taking stuff away.
Yeah, and then not giving and trying to give stuff back, right? And trying to patch up the Jenga blocks of the foundation that they kind of pulled apart from.
Yeah, it's weird now that you mention that. Yeah, if you look at what they did for XBoost from Extreme versus 2 to XBoost, there was 4 new suits, right? And then not only that, but they actually had the community vote on which ones to bring. Was it 1 or 2 that got added to Extreme versus 2 before the launch of XBoost?
I think it was 1. It was Kabakali.
It was just Kabakali, right? Yeah.
Everyone said it was ass.
I thought, wasn't it super broken when it first came out? Or no?
No, it was. Oh, he was god awful.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it was a different patch.
And then he got the Shinanju Stein treatment.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Shinanju Stein is so cool. I want to play it so bad. It looks so much fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they went to all that. They involved the community. They made a big deal about promoting the launch of XBoost, right? And the other thing that's weird is I think a lot of people expected Extreme versus 3 after XBoost because maybe
sense. Yeah,
but some sort of new, because the way that I always look at them is in groups of 2, right? You have Extreme versus and Full Boost, you have Maxi Boost and Maxi Boost on, and then you had Extreme versus 2 and XBoost. So I would have thought that there would be a new group of 2 starting, but it just seems like they're just going on with Extreme versus 2. So I was what's really the play here? Like you mentioned, are they kind of putting this out in the meantime while they're working on something else? It's possible. We don't know for sure. Copium again. As I grab my tank of copium. But yeah, it's interesting because the patches that you mentioned, yeah, like the patches are pretty far between each other now. I don't know if they're any different than how the distance was in Cross Boost. Like, were they also this far apart or no?
No, they were a lot. Well, I think we had like at least three or like at least one or two more balance patches.
Like throughout the season
With
or between like suit
yeah, and like
launches?
in a span of 4 months. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
I
yeah,
think we had
it's a
one more
huge
suit,
difference.
and then yeah, a bit more balance patches, and also one of the balance. We had a total of 3 balance patches like up until like the kind of 4 months that Densetsu no Korizawa dropped his video.
Yeah.
One of the patches was the emergency nerf for the Mars Trooper, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Man, that was a crazy era when the double Kamaris was the comp. Holy shit! Especially because of like how ass it is in Emban.
Oh yeah,
Like
oh
such a
yeah.
big comp.
Don't go
So good.
He got 2 weeks. My man only got 3 days.
I was
He
gonna
only got
say
3
like at least he got more than a week, right? Your boy was suffering.
Yeah,
You still have Brave though. That's okay. You see, at the end of the
yeah.
day, you
I
can
just get
still come
sniped
back.
out of the sky. Happy
But yeah,
birthday.
the curse song of G Witch. Holy shit! It's like permanently altered my brain chemistry when it comes to that. All right, so I don't want to keep B-Boy super long because this is the start of his day, but
Oh no,
sorry, I'm not doing shit.
I'm great.
Does anyone in chat that has any questions for B-Boy
All right,
or myself for some reason? You shouldn't have them for me because I don't know what I'm talking about. But the other thing is, if you're not following B-Boy, you should. BBoyCD on Twitch. He streams Mondays and Thursdays. Usually around like what? Around this time, EST, like 9-ish. So that would be like 6 p.m.
9 to 11 for you East Coast peeps, and then probably like 6 to 8.
Mr. Stream, when's the
6 to like
class race stream? I said questions for him, not for me, and about Extreme versus Gemma.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we
Please
might
keep in mind though, yeah, my personality is a lot more. I was about to say extreme, but I will save you all for that. A lot more boisterous. A lot more boisterous compared to, like a proper discussion of the game and whatnot. So
yeah, no, this is I made sure that B-Boy behaved himself on this stream because he's much more unhinged on his stream. There's a lot of Japanglish going on, and
Oh yes, hi.
it's so much.
So much. Yeah. Lot of English.
They're very entertaining streams, so I highly recommend you guys check them out. Well, if we don't have any questions from chat, then I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to cover. So thanks again for taking the time to come on stream. I was really looking. Oh, here we go. We got one. Do you think there will be
boost, or they will go EX versus 3?
Okay.
It's 3. This is like their third iteration. There's cross boost and then overboost, right? I don't think they're gonna make like a third. Well, to be fair, they had EX versus full boost, maxi boost on. But I feel like maxi boost and maxi boost on were kind of like the similar thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they'll probably go to like EX versus 3, or maybe. Yeah.
Because going to a new full title is probably like again our best chance at a port. Because the way I always look at it is they don't port until they have like a final balanced version. Until they're completely done balancing that version of the game and they're not updating in the arcades anymore, they're like, okay, now we're going to port it to console because then we don't have to work on it after console comes out. Like we might have to do some networking maintenance or whatever, but that's it. We don't have to worry about balance patching the game anymore. Okay, now we have questions rolling in. So this is actually a good one. I like this one. So we're now getting the Memory of Eden Legolas, obviously. Actually, funny story. I did not realize until somebody pointed it out to me that the Memory of Eden Legolas and the Legolas R are 2 different suits. I thought they were the same. I've been calling it the Legolas R for years, so I'm dumb. But, so Jem is asking, what suits do you want to see get a recolor? Like, what skins would you like to see next?
Give me a sec. I can answer that question in the form of maybe. Oh wait, maybe I put his ass away. Fuck. I usually have my HG Brave Standard with me.
Yes.
Yes.
Easy answer. I should have. I literally heard this earlier today. Damn it.
Where's the green color? Where's the green color?
Where's the green color? Do you really want to see Graham in like the standard color though? I feel like that's disrespect to the boy. And his Brave is
green.
left-handed. The
I
standard
like
one
it.
is right-handed.
It's green. I like it. Give it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Will we ever see the return of 3v3 from Gundam Versus?
I really hope so.
I really hope so.
I love 3v3.
Because so that goes back to what we were talking about with party games.
Casual modes.
Party games are fun. Like there's a reason why people like things like Halo 4 so much, right? Let me tell you. In the early days of Gundam Versus, when 3v3 was active, if you had a room of 6 virtues playing 3v3s, the entire map was pink from the Garobis. It was so funny. Like, it's such a good time. Because it's not, like, 3v3 is inherently unserious. Because Versus games are already fast-paced. If you add 2 more people, there's so much going on that you can't keep track anyway. So it makes it, like, that much more fun. Maybe even go crazy with a 4v4 mode. I feel like you might crash your router if you did that.
3v3 already kind of makes the game super laggy.
Yeah, exactly.
They did. Everyone plays Dom and also has the Dom striker, and they send out their Dom assist.
Yeah.
So you have like 60 Doms
on the map at the same time.
Yeah. Yes.
That's very good for the connection for sure. I'm surprised at how slow the rollout of recolors has been so far. When did G3 come out? Was it 2 months ago?
1 or 2 months ago, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of in line with what I would expect. Yeah. They don't want to, I guess, roll them out too quickly. Because I do think, like, there are a lot of options, but at a certain point, you are going to run out. So yeah. I feel like they don't want to rush them. I just hope they continue making them, you know, earnable and not paid. Fingers crossed. We'll see. Kind of in the same vein, I guess my one other question I have for you is like, what other, now you've got your boy Farak, but what other suits would you want to see added?
The Taurus Streeter.
Yes.
Portent.
Portent, yeah, that'd be sick. Yeah.
Yeah, the Portent. There's definitely other ones, but there's like way too many Gundams.
Give me Dark Matter.
Give me normal Vidar, 2.5 gauge Vidar, 2.5 gauge Vidar.
Yeah. That's a good one for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, there's so many good ones. Like, I wanted like Astaroth. I wanted to see like Estrella from like the 00 side stories. Like, there's so many good options. The one thing I do really like about the Extreme Versus games is they're really good at like taking those obscure or lesser known suits and putting them into the game. 2.5k Savior. Yeah, Savior would be a great choice. Like, I feel like it works so much better in a game like this because if you look at like Gun Evo, like people were like, why is Mahiru in this game? I don't know what the amount of comments that I saw where people were like, I don't know what this is. What is this on my screen? Is this even from Gundam, right? But that's because like a game like Gun Evo has a roster of like 20. Whereas with a game that has 200 suits, okay, you know, you can go for some more like lesser known options because you already have all the staples in there for the most part, right? If they do...
Yeah, but also, why was... Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead before I read the next one.
Oh, why was Dreadnought H like the first suit they released?
Yeah, I don't know who was asking for Dreadnought H.
That is like the biggest mystery.
And also, like I feel like there are better options from Astra that you could go with, right? Like, Testament Gundam is right there. Like, some cooler designs at least. I don't know. If they do an OverBoost Light, what would be a good price point, or would it be free to play? That's a good question. An OverBoost Light. If you're talking about the version that, or the kind of model that we were discussing earlier, I think that was meant to be as in like you buy a full game with a smaller roster and then you slowly add to it over time. In terms of like a light version, if you're talking about like even more of like a demo than that, I feel like you could probably make like a free demo where people would just like play through Branch Battle and maybe just like local multiplayer. Because I used to play like the old versus games, like Gundam versus Zeta Gundam and like Rengo versus Zaft. I would play those just like with my brother on split screen all the time as a kid. Like split screen gaming is kind of dead now, but we can reminisce. Yeah.
Add 4-player split screen. It's gonna be so jank. I want that. I want that. So also, put it on Switch.
Yeah, 4-player split screen so that after tournaments, everyone can just play on one screen for casuals and just banter. What else? Unicorn perfectibility links. Shut up. There's so many unicorns already. Do you think they'll start to pull in less mainstream suits like they did with Overon? We got a lot of the mainstays now, and they have the witch stuff to work through, but what's realistically left? Shenlong, the rest of Shuffle Alliance? You'd be surprised. So like, to give you just a few, like when I made my top 10 video like last year, so they've only added one of the suits on that top 10 list, and that was Core Gundam. The others were things like Taurus Ritter, which BBoy mentioned. I said Astaroth, Estrella, Gerarga from Age, Regan Julia from Iron Blooded Orphans, and like there was a few others too. So there's a lot that they can pull from. Shuffle Alliance, definitely. Things like that. Maybe some more of like the Endless Waltz Wing Gundams. They're not going to run out of suits anytime soon. It's just a matter of which ones they're going to pick. Yeah.
Erder Hunt, Gundam Iron Blooded Orphans, Erder Hunt is getting an anime.
Yeah.
We're at least probably going to see like Marcosius or Hajirobushi.
100%. Yeah.
Hopefully,
I think Cross was saying that.
Asmodeus.
Like, yeah. Asmodeus would be sick. I want to see...
Yes, the Tompas!
I want to see Marcosius, but like, I feel like because it doesn't have... Or like, I don't think the pilot was ever revealed because it was only seen in a flashback. I feel like it's less likely that we'll see it, which sucks. Because I think the only suit that doesn't have a pilot is like Night Gundam and S Gundam, right? Or EXS?
Yeah, Xs, yeah.
Yeah.
Also, actually, Funko Pop New has, Amuro. Yeah.
Funko Pop.
It should be piloted by corporations.
Yeah, exactly. Astray Noir. Yeah, Astray, like there's a bunch of Astrays to go through. Astray Mirage is sick. If you guys have seen that design, like those are awesome. Beginning 30? Yeah,
Beautiful, yeah.
Beginning 30. If CrossBoost or OverBoost games come to Steam and PS5, do you think we'll have crossplay?
I really hope so.
Ideally, yes. Yeah. Like, because if you don't have crossplay, you're kind of limiting the growth of the entire player base, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like, I could be wrong, I feel like with fighting games, it's not really like, FPS games, the issue or the concern for the longest time was like, oh, mouse and keyboard is so much more accurate than a controller, so it's unfair to pair them against each other because then PC players have an advantage. But even that, like now, people, like, I play Destiny 2 all the time. There's crossplay in Destiny 2. In Call of Duty, there's crossplay now. So that's not really as much of an issue anymore. And for fighting games, like, everyone's either playing with a pad or a stick. And whether, if stick is better than pad, which most people say that it is, that doesn't have anything to do with whether you're playing on console or PC. It's just your choice of input device. So I really hope so, because, growing that community, making it as big as possible, should be their priority if they are going to support, right? So, any last minute questions from chat before we wrap up here? I'm gonna take a sip of water because I'm so thirsty. I did a different podcast earlier today in the afternoon, so like I've just been talking nonstop.
My God, holy cow! As we say, what's got some of this?
All right. Well, so yeah, thank you again, BBoy, for taking the time to do your day. This was super fun. Would love to do this again sometime if we ever have enough. If we ever find enough shit to talk about. But
maybe they'll release it on console or something.
Maybe
we talk about that.
When we get an announcement, we can do a second version of this. Where we're like, hey, we're so excited, Copium. But yeah, thanks so much, man. I'm gonna let you go, and we'll be in touch.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Take it easy, dude.
Thank you to everyone who stopped by as well.
Awesome.
All right.